It's wild, Julio. I can tell even in the 20 minutes we've been talking, there's been so many times where I've seen you physically pause. So I believe your story. Like I believe in where you are. We can honor that little gay tornado. He got you here. But I can just there's just a way more reflection built into basically it seems like every sentence that you say.
Your transformation has been so surprising to me. You went from hiding all of the pain that you experienced to being really vulnerable about it. And you went from numbing all the time, like always being on your phone or hooking up, to being this sort of like Zen Buddha creature that you are now.
I feel like it was somewhere around when you met your husband, when you met John, you kind of settled down a bit. You changed as a person. And I was like, who is this? It was a good change. It was like you thought you knew what you wanted previously, but now you actually really knew what you wanted in a way that actually made you more powerful. Because, you know, if you think about that definition of power as knowing what you want and then being able to go get it, you actually like really knew what you want then, and you were getting it.
I'm Julio Alvarez, tech leader turned executive coach, and this is Braving Big Tech, a 5-part series about the highs, lows, and pivotal moments of my 15-year career, and what led me to the mission I am on now, empowering you with the courage to lead from your heart. My hope is that you see some of yourself in this story and use it so that together we can slow down, redefine our failures, and bring humanity back into leadership. This is part 5, Lyft, the surrender experiment. When I got back from Hoffman, life felt different, like the armor had loosened. I was no longer stuck in victim mode. I could finally see how the pain I'd been carrying around for so long was affecting my thoughts and behaviors and relationships. And now, I had the agency and the tools to start creating a new world for myself. Through my meditation practice, I was learning to sit with my thoughts and emotions and accept the present moment. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was observing, pausing, and then choosing how to respond. I was more intentional about how I was using my time. I read, journaled, and created space to connect with my intuition. That inner voice that had always really been there, but that I had so often overrode or ignored. At the end of the retreat, we did a journaling exercise to create a mantra, something simple but meaningful to guide us as we returned to our busy lives. What came to me in my most vulnerable and open-hearted state was let love in. It was so simple, yet so profound. Let love in. And so I decided to give it a try.
You certainly weren't in the mindset of starting any sort of relationship at the time that we met. I certainly was interested. What I was worried about was you were going off to Hoffman, and I was like, I really want to meet this guy again, but he might forget about me, so I want to make sure I book a plane ticket to see you, which is very uncharacteristic of me to sort of do this. It's very forward of me, but I asked you if I could book a plane ticket to San Francisco, where you were living at the time, for perhaps a week or two after your Hoffman trip had finished. In fact, you promised that you would let love in, and you let me keep my invitation to come see you, whatever it was, a week or so later on. And that was the beginning of a very special relationship that's continuing to this day. We ended up long distance relationshiping for 18 months or so. I remember some early friction where I'd go out for a drink after work about 6, 7 p.m. I was a bit tipsy, a bit merry, and I would want to phone you. And the time zones are pretty substantially different. And it was only sort of the middle of the day for you. And one of the first arguments I remember us getting into was, you need to stop phoning me at 11 o'clock sloppy drunk. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I remember talking to my best pal, Dan, I said, "Oh, Julio, he really doesn't mince his words, you know." And he's like, "Well, what is he asking?" He says, "Oh, he's just asking that I don't phone him drunk in the middle of his day." And he's like, "Well, that seems reasonable." And I said, "I agree to." I don't. That's if that's the worst argument we can get into, then I can accept that. So I got a bit more discipline with that, and
like Hoffman taught me tools and gave me self-awareness. And then you were sort of like the universe giving me you as a testing ground and saying, okay, well, now you have all these tools, like start using them, you know, like use them now. This is the time. And it was like, okay, let's give it a try.
yes, I think Hoffman, meditation, settling down with me, combination of those things means that you're just more level-headed. Fundamentally, your personality and the way that you are is incredible. I didn't want to change any of that. I just thought that you had a couple of rough edges that needed sanding down. And I think that's happened. In a way, you haven't changed a bit. You're still the Julio that I fell in love with in London, but you're also just a little bit softer at the edges, shall we say. Easier to handle.
Yes. Good answer. When you're let go suddenly, it's natural to want to rush into the next job, and that's normally what I do. But this time, I moved forward more slowly, with a newfound intentionality and trust in myself. I started to reconnect with friends and old colleagues, including someone I'd worked with at Google who is now at Lyft. As luck would have it, he was hiring. They needed a product marketer to lead Lyft's in-ride experience, and having just launched 2 big brands at Airbnb, I nailed the interview and landed the job. It was yet another Silicon Valley tech company in its high-growth pre-IPO stage. But this time, I was going in recharged with a different level of self-awareness and focus. My job was to figure out how to infuse Lyft's brand more deeply into the end-to-end rider experience, from the app to the car. This included the Lyft light on the dashboard and those cheeky in-app car icons for the holidays. I learned the power of top-of-mind brand awareness and how joy could be offered to riders in small doses, like on the welcome screen in the Lyft light that said, "Buckle up and let's go." While we weren't moving as fast as our competitor, we had the stronger brand. But capitalizing on that brand advantage was tough with the company in flux. I had 8 different managers over 3 years, the highest turnover rate I'd experienced. Turnover and leadership at the top can create cascading impacts on the teams responsible for the work. One minute there's a new CMO, the next minute they're gone, along with the annual plan they made and the people they just hired. Strategy is locked, then scrapped, and then locked, and then scrapped again. Or just when you start to build a relationship with your manager, you're redeployed to a new project and have to start that trust-building relationship from square one, putting you at a disadvantage for career growth. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that swirl. We were really trying to deliver on Lyft's mission to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. But as the underdogs in the rideshare market, it felt like we were often playing catch-up rather than making bold bets on branding, and it was easy to fall into analysis paralysis. For example, my team was working on the new Lyft light, an iconic piece of brand real estate and an evolution of the original pink mustache. We spent over a year refining the concept, but I struggled to get leadership to sign off on a final version. Indecision around strategy and price slowed us down, giving our competitors time to launch first. We pushed something out the door so we wouldn't fall further behind, but it wasn't our best option. I get it. Building a sustainable rideshare business is hard freaking work, especially while going public. There was a lot at stake. Despite budget challenges and leadership turnover, the marketing team was tight and had good energy. Bex Marr, my work wife, was my saving grace. She kept me grounded and motivated, even in the most chaotic moments.
The data point that you always hear is the number one thing that drives employee satisfaction is whether the person believes that they have a best friend at work or somebody who cares about them at work. And like, this is just the very human way of bringing that data to life. Like, I fundamentally believe that that's true. And it's a very lived experience that I had with you. We shared an appetite for big ideas and the desire to sort of like reverse engineer a way to actually make things happen in an environment where there was just a lot of swirl.
Yes, that is exactly what it was.
It was so good. It was like a friendship, but definitely more than that. It was like, we want to do cool shit and really help this brand to grow. And fundamentally, like, we wanted to just do the right thing for people, whether it was like our coworkers or our riders and drivers. And then we kind of shared this, like, I don't know what the word is it like curiosity or passion for like getting to yes. And actually, that's one of the things I remember most about you was right from the beginning, you would ask that question, how do we get to yes? Was that the way you asked it?
Yeah.
How do we get to yes?
How do we find a way to yes on this?
Yes. And it was like, wow, it kind of opened my, like, it opened my world in such a amazing way where it was like, okay, yeah, it's not this like binary thing of, you know, the answer's going to be yes or no. It's really about like the how. And I just remember like in those rooms, I felt like I would walk in sort of deflated and jaded. And then we just would build up so much energy and sort of excitement to do these big things that we felt were going to really change things for customers and for the brand. It was almost like food for my work soul. Like, wow. There's only so many days you can go sort of like plodding along and making incremental progress, at least for people who think like we do, before you're just like done.
Yeah.
So it was like the fuel that I needed to really get through days and weeks and months and years.
That's special. That was not normal with everybody. One of the things that made that so successful, our working relationship so successful, is it was high trust. There was high vulnerability. There was care and love and consideration. We were both like just trying to do better. That shared commitment really unlocked so much in that room.
I guess I just want to underscore how important it is to show up as a full human when you are really craving those relationships. And maybe like you don't even know you're craving it, but I would just say like when you find that inkling or whisper of like, oh my goodness, this is a safe person to, you know, take the risk. And if you learn that they're not, that's okay. Like, you can continue down the path and look for somebody else. But I think like that really was one of the foundations of us being able to build this relationship where we were giving each other energy because we could be just completely authentic.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I needed to have that with everybody I worked with, but I needed to have it with at least one, to a trusted confidant. Having friends like you at work make work feel worth fighting for, being in and doing. Like, the ability to just fully have a confidant and a trusted friend that you can let your hair down and just be really you. It's recharging. It really is. After a year working on the branded ride experience, I was promoted to head of product marketing for autonomous vehicles. You know, self-driving cars. Even back in 2019, I saw just how well these cars could drive themselves at scale. You see, we've been leveraging artificial intelligence long before OpenAI's ChatGPT made headlines in 2021. Understandably, many people are still wary of advanced technology like this. I mean, come on, it is scary AF to give up control, especially in a car. So how do you get people to trust the tech? That was my job. You see, marketing is the business of feelings. It's about knowing the user, knowing the product, and creating an emotional connection between the two. For AV, we were focused on creating a user experience that made riders feel comfortable and informed when requesting a self-driving car, and confident that it would get them from A to B safely. And we delivered over 100,000 self-driving rides on the Lyft platform. It was a future-forward initiative executing on Lyft's 5 to 10-year vision, so our position in the company was unique. We operated like a small startup within the larger organization, and since we weren't in the cyclone of the day-to-day, we were able to stay above a lot of the politics and thrash. We had the freedom to focus and think ahead. The team was handpicked and led by Jody Kellman, one of the most powerful and well-regarded leaders at Lyft. Being her marketing counterpart on this high-performing, values-aligned team was one of the highlights of my career. She saw my gifts in a way that not many people had before.
We were really trying to build this dream of what the future of transportation could look like. And we'd struggled within the Lyft ecosystem to find the right product marketer for that job. And as soon as I met you, it was clear we were off to the races. Like, it was just, I think you and I got into a room and just didn't stop talking.
Yeah.
I love building teams where people just get each other. You feel it in friendships, you feel it in relationships. It's that feeling of like, it's really easy to communicate. It's really easy to generate ideas. It's just easy.
Yes.
And I remember meeting you and just being like, this is my guy. Like this relationship works. It was such a sort of release of cognitive load for me, and deeply like comforting in a way, I think. For better or for worse, as a leader, I would say I had a lot of halo horn bias in me, which is where you tend to think some set of people can do no wrong. They get a halo around them, and horn, where a certain set of people can kind of do no right. And so when these people came together who were in my kind of halo group, I wanted you to love your job. I wanted you to run. And frankly, I trusted your creativity and ability to execute together. And so I think that probably the biggest thing you felt was like that you had a leader who supported you deeply. I do think for some people, there was the flip side of that, who they didn't feel that.
Yeah, it was a deeply seated trust where I could be fully vulnerable, and like you would go into meetings and just say things that I'm like, wow, I'm getting the real Jody. Like, I know where you really stand, and it's almost energetic. It's almost like it's vibrational. It's beyond the five senses.
Trust is so big for me, and I either feel it or I don't. And once I trust you, you can do a million things. You have so much latitude to just make mistakes. One phrase I've used over time is trust is an enabler to speed, because when, as a leader, you trust your team, and as a team member, you feel trusted by your leader, you are so much more comfortable asking for forgiveness. You're so much more comfortable giving that forgiveness, and you feel comfortable in that environment asking your boss or your leader for help.
Yes.
And like, really, my job as I got more senior was like, it was really pattern recognition and assistance in decision making. And the more people could trust me to come to me with problems instead of solutions, right? That's what we get taught from this really young age. Don't come to your boss with a problem, only come with a solution. And I think that's like the worst advice that we give to these babies who come into the workplace who've never seen a workplace before, let alone that category of problem. And they're incredibly capable of solving problems and thinking through problems. And so the more you can get your teams comfortable saying like, hey, it's my job to solve the problem. I would always expect my team members to solve the problem. But actually my job as a boss and as their manager is to help them come up with good solutions. And if we can do that faster together, that's where organizations thrive, is if you come in looking for help, but coming in looking for help in a productive way. It's such a big difference. And it actually helps you move faster, because if I'd said, come to me with every solution completely baked, you're going to move at a third of the speed.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think we're in but let's call it an evolutionary moment in tech where, like, there's one model of software development that's sort of the Facebook model of move fast and break things, which I think even they are moving away from as an aphorism. Certainly in autonomous, we were talking about safety critical technology. So you couldn't, you did not want to break anything. You wanted to be thoughtful and careful and cautious in your approach.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would try to say to my teams, especially as my teams got bigger, was fail fast, right? So iterate quickly, bring things to me when they feel 80% ready, not 100% ready. Come to me when it still feels a little bit uncomfortable, but you have enough of the thinking done so that I can help react. And I, as a leader, like that much more than, maybe it's because I am a natural perfectionist. And so I know the feeling of hanging on to the thing to get it like just that much more right. And I know how useless that is, both for me, but also in terms of outcomes that you're trying to drive. It's so much more helpful to get the thing into the world like 50% faster.
As we marched towards the 10-year vision and brought self-driving cars to cities across the U.S., I felt so empowered and in flow. Jody created a circle of safety and trust that allowed us to take risks, fail fast, and bounce back stronger. She understood that innovation thrives when people feel supported. And because she had an eye for talent, Bex also joined the team.
She gave me this feedback that was, I need more from you, and I know you can deliver it, but I don't exactly know how. And I just remember instantly, like the second I got off the phone with her, calling you and saying, like, what does this mean? I feel like I'm failing. I felt a lot of shame. And I remember you saying, like, I don't think it means that at all. I think this is an invitation for you to really think about who you want to be as a leader. And like, this is an amazing opportunity for you. So you kind of pulled me out of this shame spiral. And that was like the beginning of the most pivotal kind of moment for me in my career.
Wow. Yeah. I remember that call distinctly, and I could hear in your voice the shame and the frustration and the disappointment and the uncertainty. And my perspective was like, oh no, this is just Jody. She's just pushing you, honey, because she knows you have a lot of fuel in your tank. And she knows you can do it. She knows you can do a lot. And she's telling your ass, the runway is clear. Go. You don't have to deal with all the bullshit of marketing and the politics and the this and the that. You don't have any of that now. Now you can just go. And that was that's what she did for me. And that's the power of a high performing team. When your leader doesn't feel like they need to squander any of the talent on the team so that they remain and look strong and they're the one, they're the expert. No. The best leaders are the ones who are like, everybody under me, like, just go, just run towards your dream, like, use your gifts, the fullness of it.
Yes.
And that's empowering. I was heads down on autonomous vehicles until March 2020, when COVID hit and brought the world to a screeching halt.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
Coronavirus cases are on the rise in at least 11 states.
For many, it means working from home. That is the new normal.
As the fight to stop the spread of COVID-19 continues, it is starting to take a toll on so many of us, including rideshare drivers.
Uber's bookings dropped 80% in April. Lyft rides fell 75% from the same month last year, and e-bikes and scooters have lost their buzz.
With the business and survival mode, AV was dropped from the priority list, and I was redeployed to help lead the health safety program. a cross-functional team tasked with enforcing official CDC protocols. Everything from in-product messaging to cleaning procedures, mask requirements, passenger limits, and keeping windows open during the rides. This was a critical initiative for a business that relied on people being in small spaces together, especially when vaccines were not available yet. The stakes were high, and the responsibility felt enormous. Along with COVID, that year brought BLM protests in cities across the country, wildfires, hurricanes. In these unprecedented times, keeping the business going was a 24/7 operation.
2018, 2019 were almost like peak generative, creative years. And then 2020, COVID hits, and it's just like a 180 in terms of what folks are thinking about. We were partnered with this auto manufacturer called Aptiv at the time. Really, most of what they did, 99.9% of their business was making parts for auto manufacturers and being a parts supplier. But one of the parts they wanted to supply was self-driving technology. And Aptiv had a bunch of manufacturing in Wuhan. They came to us really early on and said, we have to shut down our public pilots. And I remember the Lyft team, all of us just being like, man, these guys are so conservative. Like, what are they thinking? This is going to be fine. And I think 2 weeks later, our entire office shut down. So
yes,
famous last words. So autonomous was all about the future. Turns out when the world starts to contract, it's much harder to be expansive and creative and forward-looking. They did a pretty good job as a leadership team of just sort of pivoting to this remote work environment, but this remote work environment that was very, I will say for the first few months, kind, forgiving, extremely aware of people's sort of fragile emotional state. Suddenly, my job as a leader became as much about trying to figure out how to, there's two different words that are coming to mind. One is support my team. The other was protect my team, because we didn't know how long COVID was going to last. And really, as soon as COVID came on, the first question I started getting was, hey, all these really talented people on your team, can we use them for things that are more immediately relevant? And that is where I lost you to another team, which felt like the right thing to do, but I was really pissed.
It was tough because it was like, I don't want to leave, but this is really important for the business. It was,
at some level, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You were so good. COVID safety was clearly the most critical thing the company was doing. Autonomous was clearly not the most critical thing the company was doing. We had to shut down our programs. It's like, what does any organizational leader say? Put your best people on the hardest problems. At the same time, I think you were such a cultural leader of our team that we felt it. Like, we missed you, I missed you, and you four were operating so effectively together in my mind. Like, losing one leg of that stool, even though there was still a three-legged stool left, just, it did not feel the same. And I think your energy was so real on the team that I could feel the drag of not having you there.
While the world seemed to be moving faster than ever, we tried to stay nimble and adapt to this new normal at work. I created a new set of Lyft community guidelines and launched our first major health safety campaign communicating CDC guidelines to riders and drivers on the platform. We deployed this nationwide communication strategy in under 30 days, which felt like record speed for a big tech company. But every week we were confronted with a new issue, putting us in full-on crisis management mode. As I'm sure was the case at most companies, COVID put a strain on resources and tested our resilience as leaders. Emotions were high, people armored up, operating from fear and scarcity, and grasping for control wherever they could. And without the skills to self-regulate, burnout was very real, especially with so much time spent isolated working over video calls. It was hard to be an effective teammate under these conditions, and for a lot of people, these challenges still linger. Every morning for a year, our core safety team began with a stand-up. What's going on around the room? How's the business? What needs to be done to keep people safe on the road today? And each morning, I'd update the status deck with the numbers from the New York Times. First 100 people, then 1,000, then 10,000, then eventually over 50,000 people infected with COVID each day in America. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood the stakes so we would keep safety a priority, because we were making decisions that directly impacted people's lives, especially our drivers who were considered essential workers. They were taking risks every day just to make a living. So I fought hard for them. What do they need to stay safe? How can we move faster? What needs to be reprioritized here? And how do we better staff this operation? The protector in me was activated again.
It was a crisis. It was a crisis at most companies, I imagine. You were on calls with the CEO at 1 a.m. in the back bedroom. You were just on a Google Meet, and I'm thinking, who is he talking to? And we would have FaceTime calls with Felicia, your sister, and she was breaking down in tears because she was working in a hospital, and people were dying, and it was genuinely scary. We didn't know if this was going to be like a world-ending event. Like we didn't know. Thankfully, it wasn't, but it was still incredibly serious. And I think you had that instinct of knowing that like these are what our drivers are going through. They're going home and they're probably working with what do we call them? Like essential workers.
Essential workers,
like,
yeah.
Like, drivers were essential workers. They probably worked with other essential workers. They were putting their lives at risk. And I think sometimes you felt that your colleagues weren't really seeing it that way, or perhaps weren't seeing it quite as clearly as you were. And that frustrated you. Frankly, I can understand that.
Eventually, I got so frustrated by the hurdles and hoops I had to jump through just to add, please have your mask on, to the push notification that normally says, Carlos is on the way in a white Toyota. Please be outside in 4 minutes. Some people wanted to run an experiment to see the impact on bookings first, but that would take months. I was pushing to get it done immediately. This was the moment I realized I was putting my energy into the wrong problem. It's not the product that needs recalibrating. It's the way we, as the leaders, are approaching the product. We're trying so hard to add value and prove our worth with procedures and experiments, but we're losing our hearts and therefore our humanity in the process. No one wants to be vulnerable, to have the hard conversations that are required to take action in a crisis. The system is the one that needs improvement.
I remember getting into a fight with your then boss, another wonderful guy, and he and I got along great. He thought the world of you, but we got into this very weird conversation when I think I was trying to get you back onto the autonomous team as sort of the safety stuff evolved. And I think I was pissed that you hadn't gotten promoted one year. And he was like, well, Julio's got some, like, he's great in some ways, but he's got some performance issues in other ways. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. It was so interesting for me that you could really just be that, like, I mean, almost this Zen cone like figure in my, like, talking to you was always either calming or energizing for me, depending on where I was coming in, right? But it was always positive. And then it was really clear, both from, experiencing you through other folks within the organization and even talking to you about it, that that was not everyone's experience. And I couldn't picture it.
Yeah.
And really, it all came down. It was like, basically, sometimes you didn't play well with others.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was probably around the same time where he was like, I don't understand why you're not a VP already. Like, you could easily be a VP. I'm going to go do a 360 and find out. He was like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like, you see a vision. You're already seeing 10 steps ahead of everybody else, but you're not bringing people along. And if they don't listen, you're like, you're missing the picture. Goodbye. And you have this sort of, I don't have time for you, or I'm going to go above you. Or when COVID hit and we needed to turn around a safety video for the app quickly, and we had all these creative processes and I said, screw that. I'm calling an agency. We're going to do it over the weekend. Done in 14 days. And he was like, you got it done, but you left a trail behind you because people were like, well, what happened? What about me? What about me? And so it was like, there's a balance there.
When you're in that generative environment and when you feel like you're trusted and when you feel like you are given a platform, at least my experience was like, there is nothing but goodness.
Yeah, it's limitless.
That comes. Exactly.
Yeah, but then when you feel stuck in a system and you're not feeling heard and you see all this unnecessary red tape that's slowing us down. And I come from an AV world where we're high performing, we're moving and we're shaking and we're going, we're trusting each other. But then you're in this big system where I'm like, wait, I have to wait in a queue because someone, like, what? Like, there are 1,000 people a day dying. Like, we need to move. We got to move on this.
You were very action oriented. You wanted to get things done, and you didn't play the game that sort of at some level you have to play in a big organization where there's just stupidity and there's just overhead.
Yes.
And I think your patience for that was lower, is my sense, than it could have been. Because honestly, I never saw it. I only heard about it secondhand.
Amidst the swirl, I started to see the bigger picture. So many of us leaders aren't prepared for the rapidly changing environment to come. As COVID impacted our communities and panic rippled through leadership, I remember thinking, this isn't going to stop anytime soon. All these people are dying. What do we do? We're not ready to handle this long term. And as AI continues its rapid development, more of these high-stakes projects and decisions are going to come with it, further challenging our ability to be heart-centered leaders. Navigating difficult conversations, regulating our emotions, a lot of us were not taught these skills. I know I wasn't. I had to learn them the hard way. But you know what? I finally got the message. I'm very proud of my time at Lyft. Working on brand experience, autonomous vehicles, and then COVID safety, these were meaty projects under pressure. And despite the inevitable bumps in the road, I delivered. But the real progress wasn't just in the work I accomplished, it was in how I showed up. At previous companies, I was so wrapped up in the drama of the job. I was on the roller coaster and didn't understand how to instead watch the roller coaster. But this time around, I was equipped with the mindfulness practices that I got from Hoffman. I could better regulate my anger and my frustration, and I had more self-awareness. Armoring behaviors like my need to control or to perform or to perfect or to prove, they still surfaced, but I was no longer ruled by them. And these are still things that I work on every day. Because I've also realized that personal growth is not so much a destination, but an ongoing journey. It's not a road that you cross, it is one that you walk along. We have to continue to put our skills into practice. I also had a boss that noticed where I was struggling, but was willing to coach me. Some of the best advice he gave me was so simple. When you're on a call, you can turn your camera off, take a breath, and ground yourself before reacting. Because my defenses weren't up like they were with Don, I was able to hear and implement that feedback. Another game changer was that the entire safety team had unlimited access to an outside coach because of the intense nature of the work. So I had formal coaching for the first time. These conversations allowed me to grow and get clear on how I wanted to show up as a leader. It was a safe, non-judgmental container to explore my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It was like spinning a Rubik's Cube, turning situations around in my mind, looking at them from different angles, and figuring out how to not just be well-intentioned, but also well-implemented. I loved who I became after those sessions. More clear, more grounded, more intentional. These extra skills and support helped me avoid the self-sabotage that got me in trouble at other companies, but it was still a challenging time. When the vaccine was announced, I thought COVID would soon be behind us, and I'd go back to AV with Jody, Bex, and the team I loved. But as we all know, COVID just kept getting worse. Some of my immediate family members were hospitalized, and some even passed away. It was no longer just a number on a presentation slide. It was personal. I tried splitting my time between health safety and AV briefly, but it was too much. The weight of the work and team challenges, the personal losses, and the relentless uncertainty, it was overwhelming. COVID was a moment of reckoning for a lot of people, coming to terms with how precious life really is, and reevaluating what's important. For me, that came in the form of another whisper. That internal GPS was sending me a strong message. This is the time to walk away. Go back to New York, be with your family, step off the corporate ladder. There's something else. This time, I was able to listen to that whisper. I knew this was the right thing for me, so I gracefully parted ways with Lyft. Instead of charging ahead, I was able to see glimpses of another path. I thought, I don't know exactly what's next, but I'm going to take some time off to be present and see where life takes me. It was an experiment in surrendering, inspired by Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment, which I found through, you guessed it, all those Oprah episodes I watched. She exposed me to many other spiritual teachers too, like Gary Zukov, Iyanla Vanzant, Eckhart Tolle, Pema Chodron. The list goes on. I went on this quest to read the books and listen to the interviews so that I could learn and grow as much as possible during this crossroads. And that's when the light bulb went off. We all want the tips and the tricks and the frameworks. But how to isn't really sustainable until we first reckon with what's really getting in the way. The hard stuff, the painful stuff, the stuff we try so hard to avoid. Because there is no quick fix. I thought, how do we make these teachings practical to everyday leaders? And what's my role in helping this next generation? During this surrender experiment, I set the intention of finding my voice so I could serve leaders powerfully. Every single day, I moved in the direction of that intention by reconnecting with old friends, colleagues, and even social media followers. We caught up and talked about work. I asked questions and really listened to what people are struggling with, trying to help them unblock. Little by little, I started advising in a larger capacity. I helped a friend get his AI company off the ground. I coached the marketing leadership at a major tech company. Venture capital firms started pairing me with their founders so I could guide them as they grew from pre-seed to Series A. 1 became 2, 2 became 3, 3 became 4. I was transforming into the entrepreneur I've always known myself to be. And I started to realize, wow, this was my calling. Creating a container to help leaders get out of their heads and into their hearts, into their big, brave hearts. Before you know it, I was in coaching school and supporting leaders all over tech through one-on-ones and speaking engagements and workshops and offsites. The surrender experiment was working. set an intention, do what you can, and let go of the rest. And here's the thing. The more I surrendered to the flow of life, the more the doors started opening. After thousands of hours of coaching, I saw a common theme. Many leaders feel alone at the top, and they're suffering in silence, just like I was. I kept thinking, how can I inspire and support more of these leaders by sharing my experience? So I started a podcast with the help of my college roommate who just happened to come back into my life at the right time. And the first episode led me to a stage in Harlem for a TEDx talk about leading courageously. That talk went live on my birthday, and something else crazy happened that day. I had an email in my inbox from Oprah's producers saying I was selected to attend a taping of a segment they were doing with Tyler Perry on healing childhood trauma. What are the chances? Meeting Oprah and her team was surreal, and it was deeply affirming of my surrender experiment, a sign that I was finally paying attention to my life and allowing myself to be guided by the whispers, by that which is greater than myself. Since I left Lyft, my career has evolved. I'm still working with extraordinary leaders every day, but from a different place now. That whisper turned into a calling, and that calling turned into a career.
It takes a lot of courage to get off the tech train, paycheck, benefits and whatnot, and to follow your sort of calling.
Were you nervous when I said that? When I was like, I'm going to leave. Like, I just need you to trust that I don't know what is going to happen here, but something's calling me to leave and I just need to follow that calling and you just have to be on board with it.
I wasn't nervous one bit because, as I like to say, you'd be a fool to bet against Julio Alvarez. That's a bad bet if you do that. Might as well throw your money in the bin. Your internal compass is pretty good. And you have a story that people deserve to hear and is genuinely inspiring. And on a practical note, it's very encouraging to people and genuinely helps people out. Like, you change the way people think for the better. And countless people that we know that sort of owe a lot to what you've said and done. So no, I didn't feel nervous, not one bit.
You may have heard the saying, the longest journey you will ever take is the 18 inches between your head and your heart. I know this to be true. You see, I've been in leadership roles since middle school, okay? I've read the books, I've done the trainings, always striving to be better. But I was challenged by the same circumstance over and over and over because I was too armored up to get the lessons.
It would be nice to believe that everything happens in a straight upward, arrow or whatever that, but life is not like that. It's got hills and valleys and you're going to have those times when you are in a place where you have to reassess, right? You have to realign. And sometimes that realignment comes from externally, like you didn't choose it, but obviously like it happened. And so you have to figure out how you're going to adjust to that and how you're going to dig out of it to get to that next sort of place. And if you let yourself sit there for too long, it's really hard to get out of it.
I'm realizing no one told me that the failure is part of the journey. Like, you're going to fall on your face and the work is to dust yourself off and get back up.
And I don't look at it as failure. Like, I don't even like that word anymore. I like to think of it as trial runs, this was your trial run. And, sometimes you had to work through it.
I love how Teresa reframed failure as a trial run. Because failure usually suggests total defeat, that nothing was gained. But a trial run, that feels like an experiment, a chance to test what works and what doesn't. It reminds me of Thomas Edison's famous quote about inventing the light bulb. I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. I can now see that failure is there to nudge us in another direction, towards a different strategy, or even to a better version of ourselves. It's life's way of saying, slow down, take the armor off, listen to the whispers of your heart trying to guide you.
I've been led by other people's perceptions. I've been led by my reflection. How do others see me? And that's probably taken me to an interesting place, which I have no regrets about. But how can my heart lead me into the path less trodden, which no one else has gone to and only I can walk? I recently also got made redundant, or I took redundancy. And so the good news is I've got a role as well. But I had a good 4 or 5 months to reflect. I took it as a blessing, to be honest. And I looked at my rearview mirror of life and thought, what really matters to me? What would I be telling myself beforehand? And having reached the age of 51, I am no longer defined by my job. My identity is what I believe in, my passions, my interests, not who I work for. And so long you allow that to dictate you. And I think big companies might often take advantage of that. They might take advantage of the fact that you work for a really big company, knowing that's what's going to keep you there, rather than what you are alluding to, which is what's the kind of the personal passion. That should be the thing that drives and defines you. If you had to come up with the interview questions where you wanted a heart-centered organization in a world where AI can do the drudgery, you want to rule with the heart, how would you recruit for that? How do you incentivize it in your organization? I think that'd be quite an interesting provocation.
In leadership, especially in tech, we're taught to armor up, not open up. But here's the truth. Armor is heavy, and you can go further and faster without it. It might feel vulnerable at first, yes, risky even. But soon you'll see that emotional vulnerability is not a weakness. It is your superpower. Because it's how we generate compassion. It's how we enrich our connection and how we deepen our trust with ourselves and with others. Vulnerability gives us the capacity to feel the fear and the uncertainty and still choose to do the right thing anyway. The kind thing and the human thing. Vulnerability is how we turn our setbacks into opportunities for growth and how we find empathy for the fact that everyone around us is just trying to figure this out too. These are the leadership traits of the future. Some call them soft skills, but make no mistake, these are real skills. The human skills that will be our competitive edge in a world where intelligence is increasingly commodified. The next era of leadership is not about hustling for more money, more promotions, more accolades, though our ego will fight like hell to make us believe that. It's not about being on all the time or trying to make things more perfect, because honestly, how's that working out for us? If we are going to brave big tech and the new world it is shaping, then we've got to reclaim our humanity. And this requires connecting to our hearts with the same commitment we give to our minds. Look around. So many of us struggle to embody the purpose we yearn for, the potential that lies dormant while we spend our days just trying to keep it all together so that we can reach the next rung on the ladder. But the higher you climb, the heavier the armor becomes. And eventually, you won't be able to carry it anymore. You'll hit a breaking point like I did. But here's the thing. You do not have to wait for that avalanche. Because if you're willing to slow down and pay attention, you will see that life right now is throwing you pebbles. It's speaking to you and whispering to you, inviting you to heal, to grow, to find new ways of leading. And you know what? It takes courage to accept that invitation. This is the work I am calling you into. So, what would happen if you woke up to what's really going on in your life and you healed what's actually getting in the way? What if you moved forward in alignment with who you really are and what you're here to do? That is the work of courageous leadership. Because who we are is how we lead. Showing up as authentically you will do more to change this world than any title or position of power ever could. I believe that together we can create a more conscious, heart-centered world and workplace. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen one person at a time, through countless individual acts of self-awareness, of courage, and of compassion. And it can start with you right now, okay? Share this with a friend who could benefit from hearing this story. Or better yet, use it to start a brave conversation with someone you love, a coworker, your team, your friends. That's the invitation. Stop waiting. Stop hiding. Stop playing small. The world needs your gifts, your truth, and your humanity now more than ever before. Leaders, it is time to get out of your head and into your heart, because you can do this, and you will. Are you ready? Let's go. Braving Big Tech was written and hosted by me, Julio Alvarez. It was produced and edited by Rikki Gunton, and our theme song is Breaking Out by Nick Deutsch, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. A special thank you to the 15 leaders brave enough to get on the mic with me for this series. And hey, let's stay connected. You can find me at letsgowithjulio.com. And if listening to this brings up something for you, I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a note at hello@letsgowithjulio.com. I think that's it, baby. I think we got it.